Mind Chats. My name is Lindsay Giese, and I'm the Executive Director of River Arts, Inc. And today I'm joined by longtime friend and mentor, Denny Kahn. Hi, Denny.
Hi there. Hi,
I,
Lindsay.
I guess I should, before we started this, have asked if I should call you Denny because I just have always, well, it was Mr. Kahn. And then when I finally got over that, it was Denny. So
Denny is fine.
Denny's fine. We'll be informal today. Well, thanks for chatting with me.
Well,
I know a lot about you, and I think probably a lot of the community does because you're a local celebrity. But we're gonna dig deeper today.
okay.
And like how I start every interview, just with a basic question about a little bit about your background. So if you could please share your history.
Well, I'm a Sauk Prairie resident, graduated from Sauk Prairie High School. My parents lived here most of their adult life. Um, they moved back to Sauk City in 1930s, sometime in there, um, with my three siblings. My dad built the house that we live in now. We bought the house from them back in the 80s. One of the things that I think is interesting is that I'm the tail end Charlie of the family. My three siblings are all much older than me. One has passed. My oldest living brother is retired and living in Minnesota. He was my piano teacher when I was in grade school and into high school. My sister lives in Madison, and she's a widow, and I do some care for her. My dad worked for Wisconsin Power and Light for 42 years, out of the Sauk City area for most of that time, and graduated from Sauk Prairie High School in '69. I was thinking about it this morning. I was involved in music. Obviously, I took piano lessons all the way through grade school. My living brother was my piano teacher when I was in grade school and high school for a while. And I played the saxophone in band. And by the time I was a sophomore in high school, I really thought that I wanted to be a music teacher. And I wanted to go to UW-Madison. And in 1969 or in the 1960s, you could not major on saxophone at UW-Madison. It was considered an illegitimate instrument. So I would have had to take up the clarinet. And so I started looking for other schools, and I landed at Platteville. Had a wonderful experience at UW-Platteville, and I always think everything happens for a reason. If I didn't go to Platteville, I wouldn't have met my wife. And we got married when we were in school there, and so that was serendipity that I was able to find her at Platteville, and graduated from UW-Platteville in '73 with firm intentions of being a high school band director for the rest of my life. And my first teaching job was in Hazel Green. I became the 5 through 12 band director and high school choir director because I was dual
In
certified.
Wisconsin?
Hey, yes, Hazel Green. You cannot go any further south or west in Wisconsin when
Okay.
you go to the Hazel Green. It's actually called Southwestern School District.
Oh.
And I was there for 2 years. One thing that I have found looking forward from then, I've been very fortunate to have worked in a school district for the most part where the administration supports the arts. After 2 years in Hazel Green, I really didn't feel like the arts were supported as well as they could be, and I moved on to Pearl City, Illinois for a year, and then ventured to the Madison area and worked for a music company for 2 years, selling band instruments for the most part. But I missed teaching. And
You were like the Harold Hill,
well, yeah, somewhat.
except not scamming.
I didn't give them the think method, but
Okay.
I did rental programs for the music company and called on the music teachers here in Sauk Prairie. And as a matter of fact, former classmate from high school, Vicki Dresser Nelson, was the middle school choir teacher here at the time. And she was just recently married, and her husband was teaching up north, and they had kind of a long distance marriage, and she was getting tired of that, which I can understand. And so she shared with me that she was thinking of leaving, and that's when I applied for the middle school job, and I got that in 1978. Back to what I was going to say, um, 30 plus years teaching full time in the district. Um, I was very blessed to have administrators, principals, Ellen Paul and Ted Harder, that supported the arts and made the job much easier. It was a great time working with Greg Lorenz, colleague, for all those years. Was a great run. Had a wonderful time.
And
I had a
really
principal
great.
my first year. Um, I'm not real fond of pomp and circumstance. I had to play it for every graduation at UW Platteville for 4 years. And so I tired of it. And so my first year teaching, uh, the principal told me that we have to play for the graduation. And I gave him what we were going to play. And he said, well, I don't see pomps and circumstances on the list. And I said, well, there's no such piece. And he says, yeah, we have it every year. And I said, well, it's not my favorite. I'd like to. And he says, we will have pomps and circumstances at graduation from. And I knew then and there that I didn't necessarily have a great supporter. Um, and so anyway, Alan Paul, Ted Harder are great supporters of the arts. And I think Sauk Prairie is blessed and was blessed to have them administering the middle school when I was there for those 30 plus years.
Was Ellen principal when you started?
Actually, Bob Engie was the principal who hired me. Ellen was her first year as assistant principal, and then the next year Bob retired, and she, for the next 28 years, she was my principal.
Wow. Yeah. That was a really great background.
Well,
Well done. You did a good summary.
thank you.
Well, because you sort of answered one of my next question was going to be why teaching? Did you always want to be a teacher? So you said you wanted to be a band teacher. What was the switch to choir?
Well, when we were in high school, 1,000 years ago, as a sophomore, you were administered a multiple choice test. It was called the Strong Interest Inventory Test. And you answered a whole bunch of questions. I think it was 6 or 7 pages long, multiple choice. To test your, and I'm sure it was scored by some archaic computer at the time. And when I got the results back, the first thing was music teacher, the second thing was clergy, and the third thing was funeral director.
Oh.
And of those three, teaching seemed, and that was my first one, that seemed like something I wanted to pursue. I had some wonderful teachers, and they say that teachers become teachers either because of people who have affected them or in spite of people who have affected them. And I had great teachers. I think back, my first piano teacher was Miss Mickelson, who was my brother's piano teacher when he was 6 years old. And then he took over her practice when she got too old to drive out from Madison. I had Roger Goki started me on saxophone, Dave Reinhardt, band director here for many years, Norm Delman, Harry Gutkinek at the high school in chorus. They affected me. Joe Estock at UW Platteville was a great mentor. So good teachers instilled in me a desire to want to be like them, to help kids move forward.
While you were working at the middle school, was Greg Lorenz always the band director, or were there other?
Yes, sadly, Norm Delman was the middle school band director in the late 60s. I had him in 8th grade band. He passed away the summer that Chris and I got married. And actually, I got a phone call from John Okeson wanting to know if I wanted a teaching job because he knew that I was majoring in music. And I said, I would love a teaching job. However, I've got another year of college to go. And I hadn't done my student teaching yet. Greg Lorenz was hired that summer. And so Greg was there when I got to Sauk Prairie Middle School in 1978. And we went together for 29 years. And then he retired in 2007, and as did I the first time.
Yes, that is interesting. It was 2007 that you retired the first time. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit.
Okay.
Show choir. So you started what was then called Middle Level Motion. Um, what year was that? It was my seventh grade year because I know the first year of Middle Level Motion. I was in the first
1997.
year.
We started in 97. It was for the 98 competition season.
Yeah.
Both my kids were in high school show choir with Karen and Sue. Melissa played flute in show band. Zach was a singer dancer for 4 years. Um, and we followed them everywhere with your parents because your sister was involved with Zach at the same time in show choir. And we traveled extensively, lots of miles, weekends, traveling, overnight trips. It was wonderful watching them. I got to work with Karen asked me to work with executive session a few times, working the men in the Grease. I remember schooling the guys in Grease on some of the songs, and just had a ball following show choir. Got to do the Disney trip. Um, I remember you on that Disney trip. You were an elementary student at the time.
Yep.
Uh, and so those were good memories, had wonderful things thinking about. In 96, Karen suggested to me that we do a summer show choir camp for elementary kids and had a good experience with that. I had watched show choir for years. I thought I kind of understood the idiom. Um, I, and as my son was getting ready to graduate, I had several people, including Cliff Thompson, say to me, "What are you going to do next year when Zach ages out of show choir? What are you going to fill up your weekends with?" And just off the top of my head, I said, "I think we should start a middle school show choir." And Cliff Thompson was the activities director at the time for both middle school and high school, and he was very supportive. And we launched Middle Level Motion that fall.
So you mentioned having wonderful principals, which does make a difference. Um, how were your students over the years? And
There's
I,
been a,
well,
there's
I
been a lot
specifically
of them. There's been a lot of them.
did you so when I look back, I actually feel bad for you and what I put you through as a teacher because Lindy Endress and I in eighth grade we would skip our study hall. It was study hall though, but we didn't have study hall in your classroom. We would leave the classroom we were supposed to have it in and come to your room and just ask if you could play piano for us so we could sing mostly ragtime, but lots of different things. And now when I look back, I'm like, oh, probably you had so many other things that you wanted to do or could have been doing, and you humored us.
It kind of paid off though for both of you, didn't it?
Well, so thank you. Yes, I appreciate it. But I'm wondering, like, were we like the crazy ones, or did you have other students who'd ask that of you?
I had a lot of students that wanted to do that. At that time, middle school had study halls, and students could get a pass to come down for lessons or just to maybe find a place that was a little less intimidating than sitting in a desk in a study hall. And kids were always welcome in my classroom. Um, we had practice rooms at the middle school. They could use the practice rooms. We had keyboards in there that they could use also. Um, I always wanted kids to feel like the chorus room was a welcoming place, and never required, weekly lessons from kids. Certainly encouraged it, and usually we found that by October, kids were, this is a good thing to do. This is a good place to come,
Yeah.
and
Well, it was very
helped.
welcoming, and I took advantage of it, and I don't feel bad.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I also distinctly remember, and maybe this isn't the highlight that you want to leave behind, but we watched Into the Woods, the stage version, I think in sixth grade in one of our classes. And I mean, obviously I loved the singing and I still remember a lot of the songs from choir, but something about watching that, and I'm sure we had discussions on it, but it was so like powerful and impactful to me. And I saw that and I was like, oh yes, I want to do this. This is so amazing. And do you have favorite lessons or topics that you made sure every year that you did?
Well, Into the Woods is, first of all, a lot of Sondheim is not appropriate for elementary or middle school age students. Into the Woods is on the edge. Act one is beautiful. Act two is a little dark, but I I I was just so enamored by the singing on that Broadway production. It was actually a PBS recording of the original of the Broadway play, very similar to what uh, Hamilton was just this last month. That they had recorded it and saved it for posterity, so you can see the original cast. Um, Bernadette Peters at the time was extraordinary as a witch. Um, Joanna Gleason as the baker's wife was stupendous. What I liked about that recording was the fact that I could hold it up to kids and say, "Do you hear the diction? Uh, Diction." And as an adjudicator in WSMA, I do a lot of judging for WSMA. Um, I can make reference to that to a student when I'm talking to them about diction after I've listened to their performance. And invariably, their director, who's maybe sitting in the room, will be nodding in agreement that, oh, yes, that would be a great musical to share with my students about diction. And so that's one of the reasons I glommed onto that.
Love it. Oh man, so many questions. Oh, jumping around a little bit.
Okay.
Uh, as I mentioned in the beginning, I know you very well. Besides being being my teacher and my show choir director, and being a longtime family friend,
Okay.
um, you were my volleyball coach. So I don't get to share very often that I ever had any athletic ability, and I
Oh,
wouldn't say that I.
let's put it that you were on, back then we had what we called the A squad and the B squad, so more kids could get involved. You were on the A squad, so don't run and hide
Well,
on that.
it was so much fun, and I did that for 2 years. And how long did you coach?
About 20 years. Uh, yeah.
Oh,
um,
I know that.
when I came to Sauk Prairie, I was chorus teacher. And also that at that time, it was also, I was a traveling teacher. I did some general music at Grand Avenue at the same time. I started my morning at Grand Avenue and then came to the middle school. And my second or third year in, um, I noticed that there was a posting for an assistant seventh grade track coach. And at about that time, Bill Aylward, good friend, was an eighth grade social studies teacher. I think you probably had him in eighth grade. Uh, got me running, convinced me that running was good for my health. Uh, and I didn't believe him. It took him about 6 months to get me out and about, and it became very addictive, and I started running a lot. I probably went overboard, probably from 82 to 97 or so. I ran anywhere from 20 to 35 miles a week and enjoyed it, loved it.
Well,
But anyway, I thought, well, coaching track, obviously, maybe I can get some running in. And I found out that coaching track, you don't get to do much running at all. But I did that for a couple of years. And then there was a Dale Harrelson asked me if I would be interested in coaching seventh grade volleyball. And I did that for a few years and enjoyed that. And then John Pletzer asked me if I'd be interested in moving up to coach freshman volleyball. And it just so happened that was the year my daughter Melissa was transitioning from the middle school to the high school. So I thought an opportunity to coach her at the high school level. And I coached um, high school freshman volleyball for several years. And then the eighth grade head coach job came open at the middle school. And I did that probably from, I'd say, 92 to 2003 or four when I finally hung it up. But I had fun. I love the game of volleyball, and
yeah.
it was good times.
So we've talked about a few things and a few ways that I know you. And was talking to my mom about this interview, and she said the one thing that I shouldn't talk about. You know what I'm going to talk about
Yeah,
now?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Well, uh, I think it was my 7th grade year. So you were my teacher, show choir director, volleyball coach, all of the above. But also my parents' really good friend.
Hmm.
And so somebody thought, what a great idea that we all as a family go to see Titanic together in the movie theaters.
Yeah, it was over Christmas break.
Uh huh.
One of the most embarrassing moments of or experiences of my life, sitting in the same row with my 7th grade student, watching Titanic. And I'm not going to go any further than that.
No, and for me,
Great movie, but not comfortable with my 7th grade female student sitting 4 seats away from me.
yeah, well, and for me to be, and I was sitting by my dad too.
Well, there you go.
So it's a traumatizing experience for both of us that we will
Yeah,
we'll have forever.
I'll have to get your mom for bringing it up in the first place, but that's okay.
Oh, but it's funny now. Now we can laugh about it. So a round of favorites. First thing that comes to mind for
Oh
favorites.
gosh.
I know some of these, but this is just some things that I think the general public might not know. Favorite song to teach?
Oh boy. Uh, I have to ask, solo or choir?
Choir.
Choir. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer.
Oh,
Great arrangement. SAB had a lot of success with it over the years.
oh, I like it. Okay. Favorite grade to teach?
Oh boy. I have to understand, I've taught K-12.
Yeah.
Um, if you would ask me in 2007, I would say absolutely 8th grade.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, Now, I would have to say kindergarten.
Oh, yeah, that is fun. Favorite sport to watch?
IndyCar racing.
That's what I thought you were going to say. But you thought about it for a little bit. So now I'm wondering, what were you debating between?
Well, that or um, dirt track racing at Sun Prairie, um, NASCAR at Bristol Speedway, but IndyCar is really my go-to.
But so racing though in
Yeah,
general.
yeah.
And
Kind of
that,
a
and
fun.
speaking of that, I know that this year you were not able to go because of COVID, correct?
Right.
Am I on the right but how many years in a row did you go with your son?
Well, Zach and I went for 10 years straight.
Um, favorite dog, type of dog.
Oh, well, you know the answer to that. 20 odd years ago, my wife came home and she said, I think our next dog should be a greyhound. And I looked at her like I didn't know anything about them. And this was when the track was, one of the tracks in Wisconsin was still going in the Dells. And we did some research and we applied and we adopted our first greyhound in 1995 and got our second one in 98. And they both aged out. We lost them. 2010, we adopted two at the same time. Um, and then 5 years ago, this summer, we adopted our last one. Um, they're wonderful. They're couch potatoes. I can relate to that. Uh, and With COVID going on right now, I used to go to the dog park daily with Isabella, uh, probably for the last 4 years, 5 years, and just not real comfortable doing that anymore. And she and I have been going for 2 walks a day, and it's good for her and it's great for me. So
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. I don't think that Rambo and Isabella get along very well, but it's not her fault. It's definitely his fault. So, my last favorite question is favorite student. I'm just kidding. Go year by year and list your favorite student from you probably, well, you wouldn't be able to list a favorite, but I bet you remember students by class, like what year they graduated.
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember them by that. And I remember them also by musical roles and by solos that they maybe had in show choir or solo and ensemble experiences, both, a lot of positive. Also, I remember a few from some negative experiences they had or we had, so.
Are there any, so over the decades that you were teaching, is there like a single moment that sticks out as just like the craziest day where you were like, I can't believe that this just happened during class,
Wow.
or
There's
did nothing surprise you and you were like, well, another day?
Well, for the most part, it was middle school, so a lot of things, most things didn't surprise you.
Mhm.
I remember, um, I remember very distinctly two different bomb scares or emergencies. The first one was my fault. My second teaching job, my classroom had a fire alarm in it, and my kids were notorious for not picking up their instruments and putting them on the shelves. And after rehearsal one day, I saw a saxophone case sitting on the floor, which was not appropriate. And I picked it up and I put it on the table, and it slid across the table and hit the fire alarm, and I cleaned out the school. Uh, I remember the superintendent coming out of the wanting to know who pulled the fire alarm, and I had to owe up to it. It was me, sir, my fault.
Mhm.
Uh, he was very forgiving, fortunately. We had a bomb scare at the middle school once. I remember we all had to sequester over at St. Al's for a whole afternoon, and it was very warm. Um, I remember, um,
I remember that. I feel like maybe I was in high school, but I remember going to St. Al's.
it might have been when you were in high school. It wasn't that long ago, but
Hmm.
anyway.
Hmm. I do have a lot more questions on my list, but I'm watching the time, and I just feel like I'm talking and talking. But there's one kind of big thing that I wanted to bring up. I
Okay.
don't, we didn't talk about this in advance, so probably should have. But I mentioned in the beginning. Well, you mentioned in the beginning the first time you retired was 2007. Have there been other retirements since then?
Well, I had a grand plan. It seemed to make sense in 2007 that it was a good time to go. I had a plan. Like I said, I'm a car guy. I like cars, and I had a dream that, and I had this dream for many, many years that when I retired from teaching, I was going to get involved with cars. And I had an opportunity to work part time at Kaiser Chrysler Center in Sauk. And so originally it was supposed to be 5, 6 hours a week doing some research for them and some consulting and things like that. And maybe a little driving too. So I thought that, it's going to fit in really well. And it morphed into 25, 30 hours a week. And had a lot, had a great experience selling cars, working in the car industry. And I still do some of the research for them yet to this day, online, things like that. But then the economic downturn in 2008 slowed things down so much, and the writing on the wall was is that they just didn't need me anymore. So uh, by 2009, I was retired, and my wife was still working. And that spring, the middle school job came open, the job that I had left 2 years prior. And so talked to Ted Harder and came on board and did that for a year. And circumstances came about that we needed a long-term sub at the middle school for the band program. And because I'm dual certified, they moved me over to band and hired this kid out of Drake University to come in as a long-term sub. Um, and he did such a good job. Um, I just decided that he should be the middle school choir teacher from then on. And so I retired again.
Aww.
And Matt Brennan was at the middle school then. And that summer, 2010, Karen needed to have some knee surgery. And so she asked me to step in as long-term sub for her at the high school. So I went right from middle school to high school, working with the high school program. And that was a really neat experience, working with, first of all, some former students, a lot of former students, and working at that level uh, with with chorale and treble ensemble and chamber singers. And I did that through almost well, up until November almost. And then the following year, there was an opening at Grand Avenue for a part-time elementary teacher, and did that for 4 years. And then I retired again. And then the following year, they asked me if I'd be interested in going up to Merrimack. And for the last 4 years, I was K-5 elementary and band teacher at Merrimack. And I really enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. And that's where uh, I had never taught kindergarten before. And the first year that I was there, the kindergarten class comes in, and I have to admit I was really nervous working with, because at that time we didn't have any grandchildren, and kindergartners were a foreign subject to me to a great extent. And I said, I want you to know I'm very nervous, but I want to have you know that I want this to be a very positive year. And young lady raised her hand. She was wearing a granny dress. She raised her hand and she says, "Oh, Mr. Kahn, don't worry. We're very nice. We'll be very kind to you."
Aw.
Melted my heart. And so, and it was a great run at Merrimack. I'm no longer there. I've decided that with COVID and with some family considerations, I just need to step away. So I am retired for the last time.
This is the big public announcement
Well, yeah,
right
I guess
here.
so. I guess so. Like I said, for the
An
last time. I
exclusive, a
think
coffee chat exclusive, brought to you by John Joseph Coffee. Um,
I'll have to say, I almost declined this offer because you call it a coffee chat. I'm not drinking coffee, and there's nothing naughty about what I'm drinking. I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. So,
what? I didn't know that.
no, no. My mother drank coffee. My father never did, and I just didn't like the smell of it.
But
And
even
so,
decaf?
oh, no.
No,
That's all my mother drank. Sanka.
no coffee. Okay, well, at least you have a coffee mug.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and my wife made sure, bless her heart, because she's the one who dresses me and takes care of me, and she's my sole support. She made sure that I had a mug that was the same on both sides, so there was not a blank on one side. So she's always thinking of the good things for me.
Yes, she's looking out for you.
Yes, she is.
Well, congratulations on this retirement.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. I guess I didn't realize that. So 40, 42
42
years?
years in the district, 45 years teaching altogether.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for all that you've given to Sauk Prairie and students and youth and the community. It's really incredible and lasting. Like, as you know, see, I gave you some of my lasting memories today. Singing in the choir room during study hall, Into the Woods, just so many good ones that overshadow the Titanic one,
Well,
thankfully.
there you go.
So yes, thank you so much. I know that everybody in the community would echo our appreciation and thanks for what you do. So
Well, it's a great community for supporting kids. And, you know, Ellen had an expression that she brought out of the Transcendent seminar that we kind of lived by at the middle school for all those years, that the kids come first. And so you always want to try and create educational opportunities where the kids learn and feel good about what they're doing. So that's what we tried to do.
you did it.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much. Congrats. Thanks for chatting.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye now.